wonderful. So I'm actually going to start with you, Gabriela, and I'd like to ask you, please, to share the global perspective on this issue. Of course, in your role as the former assistant director of the UNESCO in particular, I think you really look at culture, education as holistic concept where we do want to embed well-being more and more. And so how do you see in that vision the relationship with social connectedness?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Romina. As usual, amazing research of the OECD. They deserve a huge applause, don't they? It's just amazing because I remember when we started discussing these issues, we were thinking, how do we capture the feelings of people? And of course, you managed to do it in a marvelous way. And yes, now that I have moved to UNESCO, the fact is that we are reflecting on how to ensure that the frameworks that have informed policy decisions in the economic field, which are very linear, which are very simplistic in terms of what means to be human, because we are producers or we are consumers or we are labor or we are, and always defined in a functional manner. And we've heard it today with the President, who's an amazing leader. Humans are not only that. And therefore, these definitions had trickled down in terms of shaping the way we connect with others. And I think that then you find these kind of issues. And in the education system, we have been reflecting, how do you balance two issues? First and foremost, yes, we need to prepare students for the world, for the complexity, to be successful, to be well equipped for a very dynamic environment, and to get a job. They need to get a job. But at the same time, they need to be good citizens. And they need to contribute to shape the world in a different way as we have it. And I have to say that for many years, I have seen a trend in the school systems in our countries to try to go back to basics. And going back to basics is to teach maths, to teach how to read, and to be well equipped just for individual success, and that's it. And therefore, you have even the frameworks in which you measure success in the schools are being linked to the way we measure success in the economy, which is how much you individually can compete, how much you beat others. Even the way we grade students is individual. And there are not so many schools that value or provide with the spaces to reward cooperation, to reward empathy, to reward compassion, and all of these things are put aside. And then many school systems are just thinking, you know what, that's not for us, that's for the family. The family should teach values. And for us, it's just to focus on to prepare our individual students to succeed in life. At UNESCO, we think that's not the way. That's not the way because we see the world. We see the lack of empathy. We see this. The result here is about loneliness, and this is how people feel. But if you look at the outcomes in our societal relationships, in the increased violence, in the increased lack of dialogue, the increased lack of understanding among each other, or the lack of care about the planet, then the outcomes is not about loneliness. It's about what do we do with our lives? What do we do with our planets? And therefore, what we have done in UNESCO, and I commend the work of Stefania Giannini from the Education Department, but I have been very closely worked with her because humanities has something to do about that also. Social and human sciences that are not so well seen as other hardcore sciences, is to try to develop a curricula for education for peace. And this is very broad, education for peace. But education for peace exactly to get the sense of awareness in students, the sense of consciousness, the sense of responsibility among each other, but also responsibility with the peers, but also with the planet. And therefore, I feel that we need to teach for compassion. We need to teach for connecting, for understanding the other, not to beat the other, but to understand the other and to try to understand where they come from, to be self-aware. And you did this meditation in the morning. Meditation is just for you to be conscious of yourself, who you are, why are you there, and we're thinking about what is your purpose. And I think that this is the kind of thing that we do with Education for Peace. And then you bring the other element, which is culture. Culture is everything, because we are doing culture here. Speaking is culture, sharing is culture, everything is culture, this place is culture. But if you think about how you capture culture in the interaction with others, I feel it has a lot to contribute. Because at the end, again, it raises awareness about identity, about your own definitions, but also the definitions of others. And now we have launched, as we launched this framework for education for peace, compassion, and self-awareness, we also launched a path of education and culture. You know UNESCO because, of course, all of you want to have more cultural sites. And I'm very happy because Mexico has 35 and we beat a lot of, no, I'm kidding. We're talking about not beating and not being competitive, and there I go, no? The rankings, we love the rankings. No, but the fact is that how do you capture culture? How do you capture arts? And these things are the first to go whenever there are budget constraints in the schools. The artistic activities. And why? Because when you get people together to sing, when you get people together to do a theater or to do an artistic collaborative activity, you connect them in a way that is just so intangible in terms of the benefit for the being, for the collective, for the group, and for the outcome that is producing art. And therefore, introducing more art and more culture in the education system is also super important. And I would say, I saw it because I saw that the UK had this Minister of Loneliness. I will change the name because it's very sad. I will put it the other way around. But in any case, it's great that they are in charge of that. But they will also include sports. Sports again. And these are tools, culture, sports, education, to get to know oneself. And this is super important, to be conscious of the actions that we take. How do they impact others? And how do we ensure that it's not about you? It's about the whole collective. And how do we ensure that people care for each other and bring much more awareness of the self capacity to support others? Because at the end, the whole point of bringing these tools for education is to get agents of change. The consciousness of knowing that you have agency and that it's not only about getting a job, it's about building a much better world. And so I hope that that will deliver something better.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, let's now move on from UNESCO to the Commission, the European Commission, and so from the world to Europe. And Katarina, why don't you share your experience with us, why you started working on this issue and why this is so important for policy.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Romina. Also, I have to say it's quite challenging to speak after this inspirational morning and all the positive energy that we got, and to speak on a really heavy topic, I would say. Loneliness is not easy to present, not easy to assess, not always easy to understand, I have to say. So in 2022, European Commission implemented a pilot project which was brought from the European Parliament. There were few very eager MEPs who wanted to, former and at that time members of the European Parliament, who wanted to reflect on what does loneliness in European Union really means. So with that, we did a pilot project together with our colleagues from the Joint Research Center. We did several studies which helped to understand the scope of the issue. So in 2022, we did EU-wide research which showed that at that time, 13% of our population, EU population, was feeling lonely most or all of the time. Imagine 30% of Europeans, people living in European Union, any single day feeling lonely. It's enormous, facts and figures are enormous. That also showed us that it's not the marginal concern, that the perception of what loneliness is really is shifting from it is a personal problem, unfortunate but very personal, to something that is becoming a societal problem. And that is also what we at the EU level have seen and are trying to address. We have identified several aspects of loneliness. One is the impact on health and well-being, and the other is linked to impacts on economic costs of loneliness. So when it comes to the health and the well-being impact, we have partnered with our colleagues from the World Health Organization, and their data show that the impact of long loneliness has a health risks which are equal to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So if you know anyone who is smoking 15 cigarettes a day, you would tell him, stop, right? It's not healthy. You should find alternative ways. But how do we react and what do we say to the people who are feeling lonely? Do we do anything about it? Do we do anything about them? It also demystifies a myth, which Romina, you pointed rightly, that loneliness affects only older population. It affects a lot middle-aged population, 50, 55 plus, 65 and 75 are more prone to loneliness than maybe younger cohorts, but it also has a huge impact on young population. The president spoke about how many, 900 messages, 200, whichever teenagers get a day. But does this make them social? Does this make them connected? Or does this make them even more lonely in their own worlds behind the screens? So these are all the questions that we have put forward. When it comes to economic costs, they could be seen in the light of the costs that loneliness has in terms of health impact. Depression, anxiety, prone to suicide. Tomorrow we will be, I don't know if you are aware, but tomorrow is a annual walk, which is called Darkness into Light, for the prevention of suicide. It started in Ireland, but now it's a worldwide issue, where many of activists are going to get together and walk from 5 o'clock in the morning till the sunlight gets up. I believe this is not implemented for Iceland. You should start much earlier because the light is up so early. But these are the little things and little elements that make the life. And then loneliness in the working age population creates lots of problems. Long-term leaves, lots of burnouts visible, so many challenges that we do face and can relate, and we can put it clearly in the economic terms. So my key message is loneliness is really a societal problem. Loneliness is something that we need to find, and later I will speak a bit how are we going to address and what can we do at the EU level, but also what everybody can do at their own levels. But it is a societal problem looking for the solution, and something that should not be just put in a drawer with a title loneliness, but really seen how to address through many elements. I have to say I liked enormously what you said, Carmen, about culture, arts and sport. It is indeed one of the best ways to fight loneliness, especially when it comes to the older cohorts, but also to young children. And access to art and culture and sport should not be exclusive. It should be for everyone, and it should be something that, for example, we have included in our European Child Guarantee, that children living in poverty have to have free access to those services. We also see that intergenerational fairness works with young and old working together and thriving for all generations to live together and live well. And there, the bridge, art and culture, is just enormous opportunity. So thanks a lot for putting it on the agenda and advocating also in all the fora, including your own. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for highlighting the policy relevance of the topic, but also for starting talking about the solutions, because I'm sure that we are all kind of eager to hear more about it. So I'm going now to move to Ilona, and we'd like to hear from you, from your very long-standing experience in public health. what is the perspective of public health? Obviously, Katarina already mentioned a bit that, but can you say more about why this is so important, you know, to be one of the topics to prioritize? We know that there are many things to do, but why this particular one? And maybe you can start also talking about the policy solutions to this.
Well, thank you for that. And of course, all of you have already indicated that there's a strong public health case to be made, because obviously there is significant population health impacts. So we are talking about 30 to 50% of, you know, different groups, populations, etc. And, you know, anything that is that large obviously is a public health issue, and public health has to deal with it. And you've also already indicated that a number of countries have taken action, and there have been reports, there's been research. I'd just like to say, this research is not that new. We know that forever. You know, those 15 cigarettes, we know at least since 1981 from the research from, I think it was James House, who showed that very clearly. We have all the research from Aaron Antonovsky, who says, you know, what keeps people healthy, what helps them survive, and its sense of purpose. And so I think one plea I would also make, as we try to sort of rediscover this field in a way even, is to say, what have we known for a long time? But, and that's the point I want to get to, the way we look at health, medicine, and public health was not ready to include that kind of thinking, because it is highly medicalized, and because it is highly individualized. And I think that's one of my worries, and I agree with you about the title, you know, a minister for loneliness, etc. It doesn't really express the large, let me say, structural and social dimension of this. And that's why I was very happy that the WHO Commission isn't a commission on loneliness, but actually starts from the positive, to say it's a, you know, a commission on social connection and connectivity. And that's, of course, a health promotion approach, to say, you know, how do we promote health? How do we promote well-being? And therefore, I think there's absolutely two priorities. One is, you know, to clearly reduce the structural drivers of isolation. And secondly, as a solution, and this is very much the way Denmark works on this, is to work on social inclusion through design. And that, of course, both of these imply economic decisions. And that's why it's important to look at it in the context of a well-being economy. I mean, are we willing to invest in, you know, a certain type of housing? Again, I'm thinking of Denmark with the co-housing schemes that actually brings people and generations together. Are we going to, you know, have green parks with benches where people actually meet? Are we going to have playgrounds? And therefore, what we expressed in the Ottawa Charter, health is created in everyday life, and we need supportive environments to take that forward. That's the public health approach that we need. And that public health approach then, you know, picks up very much on the health in all policies dimension, because then you're very close to concepts like the 15-minute city, for example. You mentioned Barcelona and others. Yeah. Because basically what our profit-oriented economies have been creating is deserts. They have been creating social deserts for people. Because, you know, you're a little old lady like me. There isn't a shop close by. There isn't a post office close by. There is nothing close by where, without an incredible special effort, I can have social connection. And I think this is one of the really important structural things, and newer research indicates this to us, that it's not only the planned, I'm going to meet my friends and I can talk to my daughter or whatever, but it's really this, I can have a cafe, I go and have a coffee, and I do that every Tuesday, and the waitress there knows me. And I'm consciously being so concrete, because that's what we are destroying in our societies. We are destroying these kinds of everyday social connections that bind us together. You know, the web that connects. And we always say, you know, it takes a village to help a child grow. It takes a village to help us all grow as human beings, to be connected, to take things forward. I don't know, do you know what is the healthiest thing you can do?
Smile.
Well, that helps. But the healthiest thing you can do is to join a choir.
Yeah,
Yes.
singing.
Even if you don't
But,
know
you
how
know, but it's both, you know, you have to breathe, you have to do all these kind of things, but you join a community, and you also have a responsibility to that community. You know, if you're the soprano and whatever, and you say, oh, today I don't feel like going to the choir, you know, the people can't sing properly. So, you know, there's a whole sense of social interaction. But to give you that example, the Victorian Health Promotion Foundation took this research and started funding choirs. You will not believe the amount of political attack they got. How can a health promotion agency that's supposed to deal with smoking, stop addictions, you know, get people to run around the block, how can it do something as silly as supporting people singing in a choir? And that's what I mean. If we take a deficit model, if we take a medical model, if we take a model that doesn't take the kind of well-being issues that we're discussing here seriously, we are going to fail to address loneliness. Because, you know, there are these interesting aspects, you know, you go to your doctor, and he sort of sees you're lonely, and then there's this social subscription. You know, here you can go and join, I don't know, whatever old people's club where nobody wants to go to because there's only old people there. So I think really this social inclusion through design is what we need to take up as proponents of a well-being economy. And that means investment, and that needs a total change in thinking that I believe we'll need to take forward.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we'll get back to some of these very important points. Lucia, I'm going to ask you exactly the same question because you're also a health expert. So how do you see the issue? And perhaps maybe you have some reflections on what Ilona just shared in terms of the solutions. Do you agree with all the solutions? Are there any other solutions that we may contemplate?
Thank you very much, Romina. If I may, I would like to start with a quote. I am sad to see that I am no one in the eyes of everyone, and that I could disappear without making any noise. Do you happen to know who this quote is from? Fair enough, because as Shakespearean as it sounds, it's actually a text that I got from a friend a couple of days ago. I think this kind of messages that we are getting as youth, this kind of loneliness, as dramatic as it sounds, it's real. It doesn't invalidate the fact that she was feeling lonely at the time and she didn't know exactly what to do about it. What's funny is that I'm telling you, she is my friend and we interact. She's pretty much surrounded by people most of the time as I am. But I think the problem is right now we're not lacking people. We're lacking anchors. We're lacking real connections. Ilona was mentioning this sense of need to be part of something. You are needed to our community. You make sense inside of a group. It's not just you're interacting in a day with a bunch of people. Sure, that's great and that's very fun, but that doesn't build this sense of belonging, of actually being part of something. And I think that is exactly where we're lacking. We're not lacking interaction, we're lacking meaningful interaction. I think that is what we're seeing, particularly, you presented it a while ago about youth. We've seen that they got the largest deterioration when it comes to feeling lonely. And I think that's one of the reasons why we are feeling that. I think right now we're living in a world where most of our material needs are met, and we should be happy, right? We have everything. We have our phones, we have our group of people, we have our houses, we're good. But it's not the material that we need, it's the human that we really need to invest in. I think this kind of situation that could be described as a kind of like a social poverty is very much more interesting to analyze than the current poverty that we analyze. And I really commend the work of OECD and the European Commission, because I think it's very important to measure things before we take any solution. And regarding solutions, I will bounce back on also what Ilona said before. A little bit on the contrary, I'm very much of a fan of social prescribing. I think it must be redesigned for sure, as maybe some more intergenerational approach, more systematic approach. But I feel like when someone comes to the office of a GP and their need for social interaction is validated as important as their need for antibiotics, that is a very strong message, and I think that is the message that we also need to convey. Obviously, this is something that we need to do right now because the situation is bad, and we need also the part of prevention. I think the most important thing that we can do today is to actually create spaces where we can be there without consumption. I think also as a youth member, we come from a group that doesn't necessarily have the money to spend going outside. You mentioned going to a cafe. I live in Paris in a very small apartment, and sometimes the weather is not great. I don't know if you saw this, but the other day it started hailing at 25 degrees. And in that kind of situation, you cannot just go outside to a park. And you know that 9 times out of 10, you're gonna have to go to a cafe, to a restaurant. And sometimes people do not have the means to do that, so it can be difficult for them to interact because they do not have the possibility to do so. So I think it's important at a local level, but also at a national level, to think how can we create spaces where youth and other groups of people can actually interact with each other without that need to consume. And I think if we actually think it in a transversal way, we can have a very important impact on youth and youth health. If we think these spaces as alcohol-free, safe, inclusive spaces, we can actually change a lot of the social determinants of health for youth. So I think this is a very important thing that policymakers should be also considering. And maybe the last idea that I would try to convey is not really a policy idea, or a policy call. It's more of an individual call, maybe a call for you. I was working with my previous boss yesterday, and we were talking about the interactions that we have with people. And I think that people need people, and that you need to be there for the people around you, and you need to be kind to strangers. I have a very quote that I really like from, this time not a friend, but Simone Veil, which was a former Minister of Health. She said that the most important thing that people need is to feel that they exist not only in their own eyes, but in the eyes of others. So I invite you to see the people who are in front of you and to make them feel seen.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to start another quick round of questions and answers, and I think we'll have to keep it a bit short. It's very hard because this is a fascinating topic. I think it's a very complex one. I'm really happy that we had so many different sort of perspectives here, unpacking it with so many different dimensions. But when you actually, Lucia, started telling the quote, I thought that maybe comes from AI. I was just, I had a fear. I'm saying this, and I'm glad it was actually real human, and that was very meaningful. But I'm talking about AI because this is what I would like to ask to Gabriela. We talk a lot about, what is driving, what we are seeing here, and we can't really sort of say, well, the fault is with AI because AI wasn't there. But of course, there are some worries that AI is not going to perhaps make things easier, or maybe AI can provide some solutions. How do you see the relations? How do you see the nexus between AI and social connectedness?
Well, it's very interesting, and I'm really enjoying all these perspectives. But AI is just another layer that adds to the problems or to the solutions. Many times we think artificial intelligence as an exogenous force that is just coming to our heads, and then you take it and adapt it, when at the end it's us shaping the AI. And I'm very proud of the work that we have done at UNESCO on putting the ethics of AI. It's not about AI, it's about the ethics, the governance, and how we use it. Because of course it can be a force for good or a force for bad. The force for good, there are many examples of applications that are very useful in terms for doctors to recognize risks, factors in people's mental health issues. We have, of course, applications that young people can use, a safe space where they can bring their concerns without feeling that they're going to be judged. We have, of course, research that is being done in the health systems that also help us to get the diagnostic right. And therefore, I think that the tools themselves can be a source of solutions for people when they need them. But if you get to see the whole ecosystem, the way AI is being pushed into our lives, in a very disruptive way for the economy, for the society, for people, I feel that we need to be more worried than relaxed. And I think that we need to try to change the way it is impacting our lives. Because if you think just about the impact for young people, and in general, we have been now used to connect with each other through these means. But at the end, we're losing the face-to-face interaction, the one that you have been talking about, just going to a coffee and see somebody in the face, connecting, the chemistry, the kind of things that can be born with personal connections. Then the fact that social media is made to be enhancing engagement time and browsing and creating addiction, and this is happening. This is happening because the younger generation at this age is the more connected and the more isolated. Because at the end, they spend so much time in this connecting that they forget about just going out and forgetting about this world. And then the kind of values these platforms and this usage of AI for connecting, I'm not talking about the industrial use, but just in the social interaction, the features of images, what you need to be, how you need to aspire to be, it is creating a lot of mental health issues for a lot of young girls and boys, because the values it conveys is that you need to be perfect, you need to be beautiful, you need to be, when that's not the outcome in life, that's not the objective in life. So I think that this is very important. Without getting into the question of misinformation, disinformation, deepfake attacks, and 90% of the deepfakes are addressed to women and are addressed to sexualization, objectivization. So, and this has very dramatic consequences on the mental health of young girls. So I think that we don't have a healthy relationship with the technology. We don't. And therefore, I feel that is the responsibility, of course, of the ecosystem that is producing these issues and trying to just get ourselves connected and consuming. The profit-making kind of only goal from some of these industries. But the other part is for us, the consumers, to try to build a much more healthy relationship. And that's what we have been trying to do at UNESCO. We're trying to see, of course, to work with the companies to try to reduce. And there are some technological that I can just, I mean, the browsing is addictive. If you slow the browsing, and that can be done technically, people drop the thing. Why don't we do that? I mean, it doesn't look so difficult. But then you just need to put it there in the rules. And that's rules. We are policymakers, so we do the rules. But the other part is the media literacy, the protection of privacy, the protection, I mean, all of these things, I mean, it's just the very simple 101 kind of rules. We'll just need to do it. Because at the end, I feel that it is for us, again, we have the agency to define what kind of technological transition we want. And I'm sure that you agree with me that it's not the one that we are seeing. So with all the good things that they can have, of course, because having your friends and getting to see your friend that you lost in primary somewhere there in the cyberspace, you're like, wow. But I think that is systemic, the issue, more than the individual experiences.
Thank you so much. Katarina, Ilona just used these words, which I like, social inclusion by design, and I think that speaks to you to some extent, because there is, again, some relationship between, social vulnerabilities and isolation and loneliness. So what is that you have done on this, and also, the policy solutions that you're now working on within the European Commission?
Yep. Thanks a lot, Romina. Do we have to do it in 1 minute and 19?
That's the count.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's try to be short and see whether
I'll try to
be
super
discount from
short.
the organizers.
Yes, thanks a lot. First, I wanted to say to Ilona, your choir, in the eyes of the Commission, as something that we could support, and we would call it social innovation. And we would. So these are really things that change the rules and change the world, little social innovation where we can pilot, implement, and discover something in a different way that is being done. So very, very much liked your example. On the topic that you've asked me, Romina, indeed, the social isolation often comes with other vulnerabilities, be it poverty, be it poor health outcomes, be it low educational levels, be it something else, some other vulnerabilities, which I have to say at the EU level, we try to address it in twofold. We try to see it as an investment, needed investments in human capital and also needed investments in reducing poverty. So this is how we see it in the light and how we will be approaching this topic in the future and are approaching it now, because it's interlinked. There have been so many initiatives like European Child Guarantee, like the minimum income recommendation, like the big player in the room, the minimum wage directive, which made obligatory for all member states to implement the rules linked to minimum wage to reduce in-work poverty. All these elements are very important and very relevant, but let me tell you in 20 seconds what the future brings. Towards the end of this year, we will be proposing, and the new European Pillar of Social Rights Action Plan will be adopted. I hope you in the room, you have heard about European Pillar of Social Rights, right? Yes. How many?
The Europeans.
You will know it by heart.
Yeah. Good. That's one of my favorite questions I ask. It's 2017 20-pillar principle, super short. Those of you who haven't seen it, please go ahead. This is what is guiding our European social policy. So we had a first action plan, it expired last year. We are proposing a new pillar action plan. We will be working also on first time ever anti-poverty strategy at the EU level. This has been an issue that for years was addressed via the different, very isolated and separate initiatives, but there has never been a comprehensive approach. The task that we have been given is to address the root causes of poverty and reflect how to deal with those root causes, taking into account the multidimensional nature of poverty, and also many elements that we have been speaking today fall nicely within the anti-poverty strategy. Isolation, depopulation, territorial dimension, lack of transport, lack of public transport, lack of support, many elements will fit within. But it's not only anti-poverty strategy. At the same time, we will be proposing intergenerational fairness strategy, which has so many elements that we have been working together, young and old, all those in between working together. Affordable housing plan, housing a huge issue at in EU member states, but I believe throughout the world, reflecting so much on young and old, reflecting on fertility rates, reflecting on old people feeling unable to cover the basic expenses and pay the monthly charges. So all the elements that we can address. And also, we will be implementing soon many we will be developing new union of equality strategies. Gender equality, anti-racism, etc., continuing and probably boosting the strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities. When we take into account that at EU level, above 75, almost 80% of people have some kind of disability, we can have a close correlation between loneliness and disability and old age. So many of those elements, and also immediately linked to it, because EU has some tools. It's our funding, Social Climate Fund, which is programmed now, but the future multi-annual financial framework is something that will also going to shape European policies. So this was the quickest I could do it, Romina, so thanks a lot. Many more things to share, but happy to do it later.
Thank you so much, and I think we are very encouraged to see, that you want to deploy such a range of very important actions, so good luck on that. Okay, I think we really have to wrap it up, but I want to give you, a final chance, perhaps to share comments to you both, Ilona and Lucia. Maybe a comment again on the nexus between social connectedness and digital media and digital uses, or anything else that you'd like to share. But please, 1 minute each, please.
Well, I'd just like to say we are not prepared. We are not prepared what is coming our way in terms of the digital transformation. Let's just call it that and include AI and everything. So far, we have always been reactive. And unless we start to be proactive in creating, safe environments, in using these new technologies for social interaction and not destruction. So that would be my first plea, and public health and other agencies play an incredibly important role. We've introduced new terminology, we call it digital determinants of health, and that this whole area is becoming so important that we need to analyze those very significantly. And there's been increasing work on that. And, just like I spoke earlier, that you have to create social environments to a certain extent by design. What we are confronted with is enormously rich companies creating addiction by design. And unless we are able to respond, I am not sure what our world's going to look like.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm done.
Yes, we have to 10 seconds.
Then just a little bit of pressure. I just think I agree with everything that has been said. We need to switch from engagement to actual connection. We need to not say that social media is inherently evil, but try to work with it to make it an actual tool for social connection.
These are going to be the last words, and thank you so much for that.